Welcome and thank you for joining our November Janis Black-Warner Speaker Series. I'm Erin Raftery-Ryan, the Executive Director of NAMI Westside LA. I see many familiar faces, but for those of you who are new to NAMI, it is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. We are the nation's largest grassroots mental health organization dedicated to improving the lives for the millions of Americans affected with mental illness. And we are the Westside Los Angeles affiliate. We're very grateful to have you here this evening. And to learn more about our free programs and services, please visit our website, namiwla.org. I would like to thank Janis Black-Warner for making this event possible. Thank you, Janis, for your dedication and commitment to NAMI Westside LA's mission. Now, for this evening, we have two amazing speakers from Proxy Parent Foundation, a DBA of Plan of California, to discuss what parents can do to ensure their children are cared for when they pass, a topic that's very near and dear to many of our community members. So let's learn a little bit about our speakers. Bruce Lewitt, he's the Managing Director of Proxy Parent Foundation. Now, Bruce, he brings more than 30 years of experience to his role as Managing Director. From his unique background as a New York documentary filmmaker, Bruce is an effective communicator, strategic problem solver, and well-informed about beneficiary special needs within the scope of Proxy Parent Foundation role as an institutional trustee. Bruce, I know that you're going to really share a lot of information this evening and give our community tangible tools about what to do and plan for when they pass.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Bruce. We also have Carol Larkin. Carol is the Assistant Managing Director of Proxy Parent Foundation. We have more guests coming, which is so wonderful. So now she works to bring awareness to the organization and its services. She has been with the organization for over a year and brings a unique perspective as someone who has worked in the nonprofit field for nearly 10 years and as a mother to a child on the autism spectrum. Her educational background is in psychology and political science. Please join me in welcoming Bruce and Carol for this evening's speaker series. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much to everybody for taking time out of their day today to spend with us. If you just give me one moment, I will go ahead and share my screen and get our PowerPoint up and running. Great. Can everybody see that? There we go. Just a thumbs up. Perfect. All right. So thank you so much. Again, once again, we are from Proxy Parent Foundation. I am Carol Larkin and Bruce Lewitt is on the call as well. And so I'll just dive in. We will have a Q&A at the end. And I know that part is really invaluable because we can answer all of your questions. So Proxy Parent Foundation is a nonprofit organization dedicated to assisting people with disabilities by, one, safeguarding their access to public benefit programs through the creation and administration of a Plan of California Special Needs Trust, and two, by providing family-like personal support services. We were created by parents of children with disabilities in the 90s. So we've been around for a couple decades, and I'll just move on forward as well. So what is a special needs trust? It is an estate planning tool that allows its beneficiary to shelter assets and protect qualification for certain government benefits such as Medi-Cal, SSI. A person can have a standalone special needs trust or join a master pool trust like Proxy Parent Foundation. And a special needs trust is incredibly important for our loved ones with disabilities because having assets of more than $2,000 may disqualify them from government-sponsored disability and benefit programs. A special needs trust can be used to supplement rather than supplant government benefits. So it ensures that a beneficiary is able to benefit from both funding sources continuously. It's used to pay for extra medical, education, recreation, and social services not covered by public benefits. A handful of examples include purchasing computers, paying internet invoices, AAC devices, cell phones, and other personal need items. It can also be used to pay for food and shelter in specific instances, as long as it doesn't interfere with their government benefits. There are two types of special needs trusts, a first-party trust and a third-party trust. In a first-party trust, it is funded with a disabled person's own assets, such as a personal injury award, settlement, or inheritance. So in this instance, the person already has access to the money one way or another. It may or may not require court petition by a family member or a legal guardian. And when the beneficiary dies, any remaining funds are subject to rules that require the trust to repay the state for any Medi-Cal benefits previously used. A third-party trust is when someone other than the beneficiary provides the asset, such as a family member or other concerned party. In this instance, when the beneficiary dies, there is no Medi-Cal payback. Instead, the grantor designates who will receive the remaining funds after a 25% retention by Plan of California as a nonprofit trustee. And I'll just leave this up for about 5 more seconds for y'all to read, since it is one of the longer slides. Okay. The Plan of California Master Pool Trust accepts first and third party trusts. We provide the trustee. Conversely, in a standalone trust, you would have to find someone to serve as the trustee. Our funds are pooled for investment purposes and lower management fees, and a separate account is maintained for each individual beneficiary. So any gains made on an individual account remain in that individual account. No money is shared between beneficiaries. It's just pooled for those investment purposes and lower management fees. We also welcome all family involvement in all matters. We love collaboration and welcome it at any point in our process. Our Master Pool Trust is open to all disability types, all ages, and to anyone in California. We do service the entire state. And also that does mean that if the beneficiary lives in LA right now but moves to San Francisco, we move along with them as well. So the heart of our organization is really our personal support services, and that's really what the parents who started Proxy Parent Foundation sought to provide, in addition to trust administration. So we hire and supervise personal support specialists that work directly with our beneficiaries and their local communities. Service examples include assistance with finding and maintaining housing, applying for and maintaining public benefits, obtaining and maintaining medical and dental care, developing and maintaining friendships, recreation, quality of life, support with life skills such as budgeting. Our personal support specialists or proxy parents step into the shoes of a loving family member and act as a caring advocate and friend. And Bruce has been a personal support specialist, so I know he'll speak to this a little bit more when we are in the Q&A portion. But really, this is the heart and soul of our organization. And it's not a clinical role. It's, as the name implies, it's a proxy parent. So just really being there for the beneficiary and giving you that peace of mind that someone will be there to maintain all of the routines you've set with your loved one and just really be there for them. Why consider Proxy Parent Foundation? We are a private solution to a public dilemma. We provide services more efficiently and cost effectively than provided independently. We marry the expertise of the business world with the compassion of the nonprofit world. I think you'll really see this in our board of directors. We have a really good mix of people coming from the business world and also the nonprofit world. Actually, I know one of our board of directors is affiliated with NAMI as well. We are a model of what dedicated community members and disability advocates can accomplish. Our personal support services will give you the peace of mind and help answer the question, who will care when I am not there? In addition to what other pool trusts may provide, Plan of California Master Pool Trust offers enrollment without court approval. You can join by simply signing a joinder agreement. Excuse me. There is no asset minimum or maximum to join. We collaborate with Lynbrook Capital. They manage our investments. Our custodian of funds is Fidelity Investments, and our trust agent is Binder and Company. And as I just mentioned, we also have our personal support services, which really makes us unique to other master pool trusts. We also have a pay-as-you-go program, which is an option for families who have set up a trust with us and are in need of personal support services in the here and now. It's for families seeking extra support and care, or families seeking to transition their disabled loved one to a new housing arrangement. It makes it possible for the beneficiary to establish a strong rapport with their personal support specialist while the grantor is still alive. And another note that I actually wanted to add about our personal support specialists, akin to us servicing all of California, is if, again, they start out in LA with a personal support specialist and move somewhere else, we will find someone in their local community to continue working with them. To join Proxy Parent Foundation, this is kind of an overview of what that process looks like. So if you do consider us moving forward to set up your special needs trust, you would first pay an enrollment fee. It's $1,000 if you are opting into personal support services, $1,800 if you are opting out. The reasoning behind the difference in those numbers is because we want people to opt into personal support services. You know, we want that care component. We want to be there for your loved one. And so that's why we've made the enrollment fee a little bit lower. We would then complete necessary assessments with staff. Then with your attorney, you would finalize and sign our joinder agreement. And if the trust is to be funded through your will or trust, you would work with your attorney to insert the necessary bridging language. We return 2 signed and notarized originals of the joinder agreement, and then you go on to live a long and happy life, and we'll step in afterwards. And setting up a special needs trust is an incredibly big decision. So we've gathered some questions that we're often asked and things that we think are important for you as families to consider in moving forward and gathering your information. So a couple things to consider when deciding between a standalone trust or a master pool trust is who will be the trustee. So in our instance, you know, if you go with Plan of California, Proxy Parent Foundation, the option is the trustee that comes with us. Other options include naming a family member, a friend, a private fiduciary, or a financial institution. You know, to consider is, does the trustee know how to invest and manage the funds? If the trustee is a family member, will it cause any problems? What sort of oversight will the trustee have? Does the trustee know how to serve the needs of the beneficiary? Are they enmeshed in the mental health world or disability world? Do they know the resources out there? Will the trustee be able to keep up with changing government benefit regulations? And will the trustee understand the tax requirements? Those are just some things to consider if you do consider a standalone trust and to ask of your trustee. And with that being said, that is our last slide. So thank you for listening to that. I would be more than happy to provide these slides for Erin to send out via email if that is helpful. And with that, I will open it up to questions.
I'm just going to pop here for a minute. Bruce Lewitt, I'm the managing director. Just want to add one thing that Carol said, is that on our board of directors, more than half are NAMI members, and all of them have close family members who are disabled. And if you're welcome to, if you go to our website and you can see who the board members are. One of them, incidentally, is, you know, for example, Marv Southard, the former LA County Director of Mental Health. The board is really very helpful and provides an invaluable service. They really help us administer the trust.
Thank you for that, Bruce, and Carol for your overview and presentation. Are there maybe usually our presentations are a little, I see Frank has a question. So maybe we'll open this up to be more of a fireside chat and really engage and have some questions. Good to see you, Frank. And yeah, let's open it up there, and then maybe even sharing some experiences through the time that you've been with the organization and what you found are best practices with the process.
Well, sure. Just so you know, our presentations generally are about 2/3 question and answer and getting into questions, because everybody's situation is unique. All your beneficiaries unique.
Right.
So that's what we have the overview first, and just fire away anything that comes to mind.
Wonderful. Thank you, Bruce. Well, maybe we'll Carol, perhaps stop sharing screens, and so we'll open it so everyone can see each other, and then maybe we can put that information in the chat so people can copy and paste it if they'd like, and we'll open it up for conversation. So and it was very clear. So thank you, Carol. Frank.
Yeah, thank you both. Thank you both. Thank you all. Thank you, Naomi, as usual. It's really helpful. I'm curious to know if Proxy Parent has any kind of mechanism for the massive uncertainty piece of it that we may be facing, which is we have someone we love who's not disabled right now, but certainly could be. That could happen at any time. Doing fantastically right now. What do you recommend in those kinds of situations when it might be 5 years, it might be 20 years, it might be never?
Sure. Well, one thing I want to say is that we've had a number of beneficiaries who are not on any public benefits whatsoever, but their families signed up for the trust because they knew that there were underlying mental health issues. That gives us a lot more leeway in how we can provide what we can provide and how we provide it. The other thing I would suggest is that, you wait, you create the special needs trust, but then you leave instructions for your executor. They'll have a choice. If the beneficiary becomes disabled, they can then fund the trust out of the estate, or we can begin working after you pass, even if the beneficiary is not disabled. We had a beneficiary who was a full-time EMT. Worked a lot. Worked his butt off. Really loved the work, gave him a purpose, got him up out of bed every morning. And he moved from LA out to Palm Springs, and we were able to use his trust to provide him a quality of life that would otherwise have been beyond his reach. He had a salary, but we were also able to supplement that with his trust. And in his case, we didn't have to worry about any benefits. We just had to really pressure him, encourage him to accept the health care that was offered through his employer, because in this case, he didn't want to do that.
And was he actually, so is the beneficiary like him able to make a decision themselves about, like, okay, yes, I would like to access these funds now, or what say would they have in that? Or is that part of the flexibility?
Well, no, I think the flexibility should come from you when you're designing your estate plan and in the instructions that you give to your executor. Like, you'll create the trust, you'll put the bridging language in there. But if the beneficiary is doing fantastically well and is not having any problems, the executor can decide to partially fund the trust or not fund it at all. Once the trust is funded, all disbursements are at the discretion of the trustee. But we really try not to, we don't work in a vacuum. A part of the process, like Carol alluded to it in one of the slides, is we have a needs and resources assessment. After you make the initial payment of the fee into Proxy Parent Foundation, we do a needs and resource assessment with the family, through which we gather basic information. It's a psychosocial assessment, but very light, not clinical. Just how the beneficiary's been doing, where he or she has been living, what their educational background might be, who the other family members are, some family medical history, everything you would want us to know if, heaven forbid, something happened to the grantor, to the two parents, let's say, and the trust became funded way before anybody thought it would happen.
Yep, got it. Thank you.
I just wanted to add one more thing. I'm sorry. There's a very important role within the trust. It's called a contact advisor or a primary authorized representative. This would be a person designated by the grantor, the grantors. Could be a family member, could be a friend, could be a service coordinator, a case manager. It's just someone who knows the beneficiary, who we could consult with on a regular basis. They could be as involved as they wanted to be. If they wanted to make disbursements, they would get them approved by us first. We could reimburse them. Plus, very importantly, they could receive trust statements every month so they could see how the trust is doing. Some contact advisors really welcome the role, want to be involved. Like, I will call someone once a trust becomes funded, and sometimes I'll hear, "Why are you calling me? Why did my aunt, uncle, mom, dad, brother, sister, whatever, put me in this role? I don't want anything to do with the beneficiary." Okay, but other times there is someone who does want to stay involved, so they have that opportunity through that role.
So do they serve sort of as like a adjunct to the trustee in a way, or sort of a consultant adjunct kind of?
Yes. They couldn't decide whether or not we'll make the disbursement, but we would certainly welcome their input. They could act as an advocate for the beneficiary. Hopefully the beneficiary also has a personal support specialist who's working with them. That person gets to know the beneficiary, understand their needs, and is able to help the beneficiary communicate those needs to staff, especially the trustee. For example, an institution can't be trustee. It has to be an individual. So like with Proxy Parent Foundation, the Plan of California Master Pool Trust, currently I'm the trustee along with a gentleman named Eric Binder from Binder and Company. It's a CPA firm. They handle our disbursements. But they will post all the requested disbursements every day, and they have to, each and every disbursement has to be approved. How do we decide to approve them? It's through the information we gather from the beneficiary, from the needs assessment, from the personal support specialist, from a family member, and we just always try to act in the best interest of the beneficiary.
And does the beneficiary have a chance for his or her or their own agency talk about it themselves?
Absolutely. We take calls all the time. Beneficiaries call all the time. Carol is also getting those calls from beneficiaries. They have our number. They can call, text, email, all sorts of ways. And we will certainly listen and do our best to meet their expressed needs. Sometimes we have to say no, just the way a parent has to say no, but we don't look to say no. We would like we try to make a trust. Each account lasts the lifetime of the beneficiary. It's kind of a tall order because you never know what's going to happen. So when we do a new budget for every beneficiary who gets personal support services at least once a year. So we're constantly monitoring the expenditures, how the trust is doing, how long it's going to last, what's the age of the beneficiary, what's their health, the physical health like, to try to extend the life of the trust. And that's something, that's an important factor in a lot of distribution, in a lot of decisions that we have to make. We buy lots of automobiles for beneficiaries if they're able to drive and have a valid driver's license. We can pay for auto insurance, car repairs, things like that. But if, let's say, a beneficiary is homeless, and if they want a car, we'll have to really weigh that, because is it really in the best interest of the beneficiary to live in the car on the street? We would really have to engage the beneficiary in a freewheeling discussion, and these discussions can get very freewheeling, just like they would be with your family member and a parent.
Sorry, I don't want to monopolize. I'm sure other people have a lot of questions. I'm just curious, though, if you have any beneficiaries that have a spouse or any family of their own.
Let me just quickly think. Yes, we do. Oh yeah, actually, we just had a beneficiary who not only married, but she just had a baby. We were really very concerned at first, because this is the second child that she's had, and the first child, Child Protective Services had to go in and take the baby out of the home, and several years later, they just had the second baby, and mom's doing great, the baby's doing great, and the husband is managing his own behavioral issues, and it's so nice to see. And I keep hearing that I hear this from personal support specialists, that the mom, the beneficiary, has really matured in so many unexpected ways. So yes, it does happen.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I had a question. My name's Andy. Hi, thank you.
Hi.
1 second, my camera's off. I'm putting it on. There you go. So we've got a special needs trust set up. Our biggest concern is we've got 2 kids. It's our oldest who's got the mental illness challenges, and we really don't want our younger son to take on the burden of saying no to his older brother. And this is really intriguing because it puts someone else there. Brother can still have a role, but not be the gatekeeper.
Yes.
The question we have is, our son could be really challenging. He's challenging to stay in a place for long enough. He's challenging to follow the rules. He's challenging to accept no. And I guess the question is, I think you call it the personal support specialist, which is their kind of liaison.
Mm-hmm.
I assume those individuals have tough skin and the ability to be asked the thing 50 times, and because that's the hard.
No.
The money's not that money's easy. It's never easy, but compared to managing the stuff, that's really the big part that we're the most.
All of our proxy parents, our personal support specialists, are very, very experienced, and they're quite capable. very capable, and they know how to talk with the beneficiary. And some we don't, for lack of a better term, cherry pick our beneficiaries. Just take the easy folks. We get calls from families all the time saying that we were referred to you by another, let's unnamed pool trust. And then I find out from the family that another trust wouldn't take them because the beneficiary was so, as you described, challenging. We were set up by families who had very challenging children. And that's part of our mission, is to work with all beneficiaries. We meet them on their own turf, how they're doing. But we can do it. We do it on a daily basis. I can give you so many stories, so many difficult beneficiaries. There's one particular beneficiary, and I don't know why I bring her up sometimes. It's just that I think of her a lot because it was so contentious working with her. And I was a personal sports specialist at the time. Then I became director of social services, and I was interacting with her a lot. Very smart, very intelligent, but a fighter, and just fought tooth and nail.
That's
And then sadly, she got sick. And right before she died, she sent me an email that was, thanking me for being there the whole time, and apologizing. She knows how difficult she was, but that's what we do.
Thank you.
That's good to know.
Yes. So how are you funded? I know you're a nonprofit, but how?
Sure. Well, we have,
you-
as trustee, we earn trustee fees. Plus, we have an admin fee, administrative fee on top of our personal support hours. That contributes some funding. We have remainder funds as a nonprofit, especially on the first party beneficiary side. If a beneficiary dies and there's still funds left in the trust. On a third party trust, the family would designate who would get the funds. But as a nonprofit, Proxy Parent Foundation would receive 25% of their, and that goes into our board restricted funds. So that, that's there if we need it. Plus we get donations. We have some very generous donors. Our goal is not to have to rely on any outside funding at all. And we're getting there. We get a little bit closer every year. And we keep our staff is small, lean. There are 3 of us. However, we have Lindbrook Capital, our investment manager. They're helping execute the investment platforms. They're available to us. There's constant communication with them every day. There's Binder and Company. They're handling the posting the disbursements and actually physically writing the checks or making transfers. So we have a very, let's call that our back office, that is very, very extensive. So though we have a small staff, we have all these other elements. Plus, of course, the funds are held on a daily basis by Fidelity Investments. And they're very strict. They really are. Like in setting up a trust, everything has to be exact. They have very strict criteria, and we're grateful for that.
So what are the trustee fees and the admin fees?
Well, for the trustee fees, for a trust that's greater than $300,000, the trustee fee is 1.25% a year, taken out in quarterly installments. For a trust between 100,000 and 300,000, it's 1.5% a year, taken out in quarterly installments. For a trust under $100,000, it's 1.75% a year. against a yearly minimum trustee fee of $750. Our admin fees, our personal support fees that's an hourly fee that's taken out of the trust. Here in Los Angeles, that's currently about $85 an hour. And there's a 15% admin fee on top of the service hours. Then there's also Lindbrook Capital, the investment manager, and you'll find this in any financial institution or other trust. They have a 1% fee, also taken out in quarterly installments. The only other fee would be a yearly tax preparation fee that Binder and Company charges of $275 to do the taxes. And then, of course, taxes are paid out of each individual trust account, depending on what the gains were a year.
Got it. Okay.
I just want to note that I added the rate sheet to the chat. I'm a visual learner myself, so it's there if you need it. I know sometimes listening to numbers can be overwhelming.
Thank you very much.
Andy, is there more to your question?
No. Thank you. That I'm sure I'll have more, but for now, that was really helpful. Thank you.
Let me until the question pops up, then I'll pipe down.
Oh, I have a question.
Great.
That's
Great.
why it's kind of going off of Andy asking about personal sports specialists. I have a chat question of what is the frequency and duration of personal support interactions? So if you could just speak a little bit to that, and also the ratio and the background of our personal support specialists.
That's a great question. The background of our personal support specialists, all different backgrounds. Some are clinicians in their day jobs, but in their role as a proxy parent, they're not clinicians, which means that the boundaries are a little different. The limits are different. They're accessible to the beneficiary after 5 p.m. There's frequent contact by phone, text, email, and visits. How many face-to-face visits? That depends on what's necessary, what's appropriate, and also what the resources of the trust might be. There are some beneficiaries who see their personal support specialist in person every week, sometimes twice a week. There was a beneficiary that I once worked with when I was doing proxy parent work. I was meeting with him 3 or 4 times a week. Plus, he would call me every morning. The first call I got every morning was from him. His name was Tony, and he would sing the Kellogg song, and every morning. But it was a great way to start my day. I was very happy that he did it, and I could tell you what he was doing at any point during the day. I knew what his schedule was. It was, I don't know, a lot of our personal sports specialists are able to do that too. The resources of the trust permit that. There are how many backgrounds of the personal sports specialists? There's one gentleman who has a background in clinical psych, but more important, he has a music background, which helps him to relate to the beneficiaries on a completely different level. We have one beneficiary who, for example, he's a terrific songwriter, and we were able to set up his room in luckily we were able to get him an assisted living waiver in a place and get him a private room there. And we set up his room like a little music studio. And with GarageBand and a good Mac computer, microphones, recording equipment, and he gets a visit from someone who's been acting in a producer type role for a number of years. And Eric works with him now, and it works beautifully. But when we're able to do something like that, it's such a wonderful expression of what the family would have wanted and what we're able to provide, and anything that we can do that gets the beneficiary out of bed in the morning, we are just so happy to do. So that's one background. Another background was we had another personal sports specialist who is a stand-up comedian, but also has a background as she worked for a fiduciary for a long time. And she's extremely capable. Another personal sports specialist is a licensed MFT and worked at Board and Cares for many years. Knows that world in and out. And all sorts of backgrounds. If somebody came to me and they were they had an art history background, I'd be thrilled. Because it's the the humanities and being able to communicate and have an understanding of behaviors and that can only come through really experience, not book learning. I mean, I've learned everything that I've learned over the years by working with beneficiaries and their families. And I just had an insatiable curiosity to learn. And I'm very grateful that I can do that. I don't think a lot of people could come up the way I came up, but I'm always looking for an opportunity to bring in people that way who don't come from a psychology background, because they bring so much more into their role as a proxy parent. And it's a long answer to a good question and a simple question, so I apologize.
If you could add on to that, let me see. Actually, I think you answered all of the questions for that. And we have another one in the chat. Do we continue with beneficiaries if they move out of California, which I think is a good topic to cover?
That's a yes and no question. It all depends on the beneficiary and what type of support system they have outside of California. We have a beneficiaries who moved from the Long Beach area to Hawaii, and he has a family member out there, and we're still handling the trust, and it's working beautifully. We have another beneficiary who's out in New Mexico, but there's a whole support system already in place. So we can't provide personal support services ourselves to that beneficiary out of California. But if we can somehow duplicate it, we would certainly look at it and be open to it. There was another beneficiary who moved to Oklahoma, to his old neighborhood. And we found a trustee out in Oklahoma to handle the trust, because the problem is that every state has their own rules for Medicaid. So we want to make sure that we're aware of all the rules and regulations in any particular area.
Oh.
Erin, I think you had a question.
Well, I see that Donna's hand is up, so go ahead, Donna.
If I wanted to do it verbally, not by chat, but I just have a question. So if I have the trust, the special needs trust, and have someone from the proxy parent group, and I have them as the trustee, so what happens immediately upon my death? Would my son, who's the one that's involved, he would have your phone number and he would call proxy parent, or what physically actually happens at the moment?
Well, we would certainly want them to have our number, which doesn't change. Though we changed our mailing address, our number is the same. That would be the responsibility of your executor in your living trust, to contact us when the surviving grantor or the grantor is passed, to work out. They would contact us. We would help them make the arrangements to fund the trust. I think there's an important distinction that I'd like to make, even though the question hasn't been asked. We can only serve as trustee once you've joined our trust. If you have a standalone trust and you would like us to serve as trustee of that, currently we're unable to do that. You would need to join our trust, and the funds would go into the master pool trust and then into an individual separate sub-account within our trust that you've established.
So I already have a special needs trust that I went to I got the name from NAMI to go to him. And so I have it written out, but I don't really have someone to execute it right now because, well, I'm not sure I do, because the woman whose name I have on there, I'm not sure she's still willing to do it. So then I have to go to Proxy Parent now and get a new trust.
Yes. What you would do is you would set up the trust with us and then go back to your attorney, and he would put new language in your living trust, new bridging language that would make reference to the trust that you've set up with us. And your wishes, should be quite explicit. This is the trust that I want funded, and then you would revoke the other trust. Having said that, there are families that have more than one special needs trust.
Oh, not more than one.
It's not the most efficient way of doing it, but there's some families who do that for reasons that I'm happy to discuss with you.
Right, because the one who needs the proxy parent one would be my son, but I also have a daughter, and so I have it that they'll each get 50%. And so then if I go through proxy parent, then they would handle what give the money to my daughter also.
No, we would only handle the funds for your disabled family member. Yeah.
And so then what? I have to have a separate trust that's not through proxy parent, like through the lawyer, the individual.
Yeah, well, you should need to talk to your lawyer about that. I mean, they might, however you decide to direct the funds to your daughter, whether, there are all sorts of ways that the lawyer can work with you on that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Bruce, if you could just quickly touch upon the ratio of beneficiary to support specialist, so about how big is their caseload?
That varies. Some have one, some have 8, one has 6. I mean, it's different. It depends on their availability and time, the time that they can devote to it. But there's no set amount
And
of beneficiaries per personal sports specialist.
how many beneficiaries do we have active right now?
We have about 185 funded trusts, well over $10 million in the trust. We have about 47 active beneficiaries who are receiving personal support services. There are other beneficiaries who are not, the families didn't sign up for personal support services, or their first party trusts. A first party trust is the self-settled trust. Let's say if your disabled family member, heaven forbid, had an accident, a car accident, and was getting a settlement. Well, if they got that settlement, that could really mess up their benefits. So they could set up a trust for themselves. That's the first party trust.
Thank you, Bruce. I feel like you're sharing so much helpful information, you too, Carol, and real tangible tools for our community. And I want to ask a little bit like what Frank, I gave your question a thumbs up because I thought this was such an interesting, in your bio, you were a documentary filmmaker. So how did you go from documentary filmmaker to Proxy Parenthood? And, what is your story? How was that journey for you?
Well, when I moved out here, I had a neighbor. I lived in Santa Monica for many, many, many years. And I had a neighbor, and I used to walk my dog past. He'd be sitting on his stoop at night, and he'd be decompressing. And we just started talking. And as it turns out, he was from New York. I'm from New York. He was working at a center for the mentally ill and homeless. We got to talking, and he said, "Well, why don't you come in and volunteer? And you might meet some interesting people." And that's exactly what I did. And I started volunteering. One day turned into 2 days, turned into 3 days, turned into, starting with things like, handing out toothpaste and putting it on a toothbrush and towels. People take showers, to sitting down and talking with them and working on, all sorts of things, helping them find housing, socialization. And initially, I had a camera, and a lot of times it really kind of broke the barrier. It kind of made me, I don't want to use the term, not another social worker. It made me a little different. I mean, I started a movie club there. And they kept giving me more and more responsibilities. And like I mentioned before, I had just a voracious appetite for it. And I got really good at it. And it just continued. And the whole time, pretty much, at the time, the center was a subcontractor for the original for Proxy Parent Foundation. So I started to work with one or two beneficiaries, and the center went through a number of CEOs and executive directors, and they all wanted to put their own stamp on things. And would tell me, you have to stop working with that beneficiary. You must stop working for that beneficiary. And I never stopped working with the beneficiaries. And eventually I transitioned to working full-time with Proxy Parent Foundation a long time ago. So that's in a nutshell. And
Thank you for sharing, Bruce. And how about you, Carol?
I came to Proxy Parent. Prior to this, I was actually working in housing. So I have a little bit of a housing background, and I worked in affordable housing. So I was working with homeless families, but they also had individuals there that were living through vouchers from the regional center. So I got to know some of the beneficiaries there. And as I transitioned to Proxy Parent, those two worlds kind of enmeshed. And then as life would have it, around the same time, my son was diagnosed as being on the spectrum. So it was personal life and work life kind of coming together. So for me, working in this role, it's a privilege meeting parents and getting to hear everyone's story. And there's a duality when I'm out in the community speaking to organizations. So on one hand, I'm like, oh, great, like, we can bring this to Proxy Parent and also learn about us. But and I'm also like, I want to sign my son up for this too. So it's been a kind of wonderful enmeshing of my personal and private life, which as a work from home person as well, it's all kind of mixed together.
Thank you. I think a lot of us can relate to that very much. So thank you both for sharing. Are there any other questions from our community members or thoughts? Janis, please.
Hi, Bruce. Thank you for tonight. I think a lot of us who manage our relatives, it's really hard. And we take on a lot of these it's not a burden, it's a pleasure because it's our family members. And it's so hard to think, if we're not here one day, who is going to be the one. And earlier, one of you was sharing that you had someone you thought was going to be the one to help if you're not here. And I have that same situation, that I don't feel that person is competent enough to do it anymore. And my question for you guys is, how old is your organization?
We've been here since 1991.
Okay. And you said there's 3 support staff, and how many personal support specialists are signed up now?
Working around the state, about 17.
It's funny, as I'm a networker, I actually have someone in mind that I think would be they're actually a companion for my son who's in the NAMI community. And I think he would be phenomenal, because when you're a companion, sometimes you lose a lot of your clients because they move around the state or go to different. But this person, I'm thinking I'd like to hook up with you guys. And it is scary thinking about the future. If we're not here, who's going to take care of our loved ones the way we do? And I learned one thing I wanted to share in my NAMI family to family class, is that it's scary because the siblings, you think you want them to take care of your family member, but I don't think all of them are set up to emotionally or mentally. And it would be nice to have someone else to take the reins out of their. Have you ever had a family member fight you after the funds that they want to run the family member, and it was designated to you? Because I would worry about that.
Well, we've had beneficiaries who go, why did my parents set up a special needs trust? There's nothing wrong. I want the funds myself. I don't want you between me and the money. That happens from time to time. We've never had a family member do battle with us because they were angry. You know, they weren't controlling their siblings' funds. That's where the role of the contact advisor that I was talking to Frank about is so important, because it really gives voice to a family member to participate in the decisions that we make.
Thank you.
I'll kind of add on to that, if that's okay. Coming into this line of work, an example that kind of comes out at me, it's not about the family member fighting us for control of the funds, but we had a family member who wanted to transfer the trust over to us because he was telling us, my sibling is showing up at my house and in a, and at the height of their mental illness at 3 a.m, knocking on my door, making threats, this and that. And I think that sometimes you don't think about that because you think, oh, our family, of course, is going to be there to take care of our loved one. But all of that to say is that sometimes you want family to just be family and remove that financial component of them. Don't, be there as a loved one, be there for support, but you don't want them to be on your lawn at 3 a.m. demanding their money, and you can't even give it to them at that point in time, even if you wanted to.
Well, they can still be on the lawn at 3:30 in the morning. I mean, it's.
I have another question. What if the family member is conserved? How do you deal with the conservator? How does it work?
Well, the funds in our trust have nothing to do with what the conservator is doing. The conservator might be handling the beneficiary's Social Security funds as a rep payee, but we work with conservators all the time. We work with a deputy public guardians from the county public guardians office in different counties around the state. We work with a few private conservators as well. Conservatorship is, can be helpful. sometimes. It all depends. But we'll work with anybody. We don't want to work in a vacuum. We do everything we can so we don't work in a vacuum. And the conservators' main job sometimes is simply to sign their beneficiary in and out of housing. Sometimes, conservators it's a multifaceted role, but sometimes that's all they do. And in the public system, I would say there's only with one exception, the public guardians, the deputy public guardians have really welcomed our involvement because they're so overworked and they have so many people they work with. They frequently can't devote the time that they would like to. I've always found in the public system, people want to do the right thing. They really do. Case managers, service coordinators can very committed. But they have a lot of people that they work with. They have a very heavy caseload. So we try to work with them, supplement what they're doing, not supplant what they're doing.
Karen, I have a question in the chat box for you, if you can read that.
Second.
I think the question is, how is proxy parent different than naming one of the relatives as trustee or hire a trustee from Fidelity or Schwab or another investment company?
Oh, well, we've been doing this for a very, very long time. We are, we're very experienced. We've been working with, like I was telling Frank, all types of beneficiaries. And we have a very deep back office with Lindbrook Capital and with Binder and Company. And we are, an institutional trustee, which means that if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, the trust continues. Someone will step into my role. Plus, there is the other co-trustee as well. With a bank, let's say you mentioned Fidelity, or you mentioned Schwab or JP Morgan or whomever, they won't touch a trust that's not very, very large. Also, we had a beneficiary. It was a very, very large trust, and the beneficiary would go to the local Wells Fargo branch, and we would get calls from the bank saying, "Please, can you do something? Please get this beneficiary, get him out of here. He's causing a ruckus." We welcome that kind of contact, that kind of interaction. A lot of trustees don't. I don't think an institutional bank trustee is going to want to see the beneficiary knocking on their door.
Thank you, Bruce. I see that Frank has his hand up.
Thanks, Aaron. Actually, I saw Carla with raising your hand, and if I may have been wrong, but if I'm not, Carla, go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, did you mean me?
Yes.
Okay. My name's Kartar, but I can see.
Oh, sorry.
Looks like
I'm sorry.
Carla. Yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of questions. I looked into proxy parents years ago, and it's still in my background consciousness that I might switch over to proxy parent. Right now, the special needs trust is set up with a private fiduciary. They're my age, although it's a family business, so the kids in the 30s and 40s would probably end up being the fiduciaries and the trustees if I stay with them. But I do like, everything that I've heard tonight. I liked everything that I heard previous presentations. I did have one question years ago about what happens with the leftover money. And if that's the good fortune that's a beneficiary, doesn't die penniless. But back then, years ago, Proxy parents took the remainder of the money. And I feel so indebted to where my son's living right now that I wanted them to have a piece of the pie. So it sounds like 25% is what you retain, and that somebody could still the balance to whatever person or agency they want. I had just the question that I raised my hand a second ago about whether or not proxy parents would ever take on the role of being a conservator.
No,
You won't. Okay.
no,
Because I'm the
it's a separate,
conservator right now.
it's really a separate role. The funds, we never commingle the funds, from Social Security funds, and the trust funds. Also, there could be, it's a conflict of interest sometimes. We have to, so no, we work with outside conservators. We welcome that, but we won't serve as conservator.
Okay. I mean, that sounds good. I had, with my son, we had a kind of a bad experience with the LA County public guardian. And like you said, they're totally overworked. Each conservator has 200 conservatees. It's kind of ridiculous. But as long as you have private, conservators, that makes me feel really comfortable. So
sure. And there are families that we talk with for over 20 years before they are ready to make the decision. I mean, it's a really tough decision.
Yeah. And in my case, the way I set up my son's special needs trust is that if I become incapacitated but don't die at that moment, that the current trustees for my son, they actually become my trustee. They'll start handling my financial affairs and well-being and medical decisions as well as my son. Now, it doesn't sound like you do that, so I would need to separate my living trust from the standalone special needs trust at some point, because a lot of people think that they're just going to die one day, and they don't even think about how they might have a long-term illness that prevents them from continuing to care for their mentally ill son or daughter. So it's a lot to think about.
I know. And please make sure the fiduciary does have a succession plan, because there was something that happened about a year ago. There was a fiduciary out in the valleys, and the fiduciary died without making any plans. And there were all these people she was working with who were just out there.
Yeah.
It's really a shame.
Well, these folks they're a family business. And like I said, the children in their 30s and 40s are already handling cases. The parents, the founders of the company, are probably in their late 60s. And but they'll take on the task of being a conservator. And at the moment, that was comforting to know. It sounds like what you do with your care and support might even make having a conservator not totally necessary, for somebody who's a beneficiary who's cooperative and understands that you hold the purse strings. And just, I hope my son doesn't have to be conserved forever, so.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, there are people who are conserved who don't need to be conserved. There are people who are conserved, and thank goodness they're conserved.
Yeah.
And we'll really have to see how the new mental health laws shake out, and how, people respond to care court and to the changing standards. Because right now, there's so many instances in which there are conservators who are, are doing a really, really good job. And there are other times in which I just roll my eyes, and, But
Yeah.
we have the trust. They can't, a conservator can't get into the trust at all. And it's
Right.
really nice to have that separation. It
Mm-hmm.
really is. It's like in Proxy Parent Foundation, looking over my shoulder every day is Binder and Company, is Lynbrook Capital, and is our board of directors. There's
Mm-hmm.
multiple layers of oversight. And I don't think you'll find that with a fiduciary. I mean, I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong, but I mean, that's another consideration.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to advertise for this other people, but they have their financial accountants and whatnot. Like I own a home, and I know it would be in my son's best interest if the home was retained and rented out and the passive income went to him. There's no way he can live in the house. You know, he's in a group home right now. So I always update a letter of intent every year saying what's appropriate
Good.
now and what I want and what have you. So I know it
Terrific.
sounds like you encourage that and do an annual, kind of checkup on people's status.
Sure. And once the trust is set up, we really want the grantors to contact us whenever there's kind of any update to the beneficiary situation.
Yeah.
And we just put that in our digital files. And so when that day comes, we can hit the ground running.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Do you have any, I know things have to be confidential, but do you have any clients who are affiliated with the John Henry Foundation?
Beneficiary, the family's in the process of signing up with John Henry Foundation. John Henry Foundation is fantastic.
Yeah,
and
my son
I brought a beneficiary I was hoping to get in there. And it would have been a great place for him, but he made it clear that he didn't want to do any chores. And so he didn't get in the John Henry Foundation. So, but it's
my
really
son doesn't
good.
do any chores.
Oh, that's
either.
amazing. That's amazing.
Well, he does the basic minimum. He does do his laundry, but it took a while to get him used to it. So
I wish there were more John Henry Foundations, and I wish it was more affordable for a lot of families too. But congratulations for getting your son in there.
yeah. Yeah. Good. We'll be in touch.
If I may, one more question that was direct message to me that I do think is really important to cover is if a trust funds are depleted, what is the exit process? I'm sure everyone is wondering.
No, well, like I mentioned, we do a new budget for each beneficiary who's receiving personal support services. So we're constantly aware of what's left in the trust, the remaining balance, and we're kept up. We know how the beneficiary is doing. We've never had a third-party trust run out of money. First-party trusts are different. First-party trusts are usually much smaller, and sometimes they get spent down in 5 years, 6 years, 10 years, or even sooner than, quite fast. But a third-party trust is different. So we've never had a beneficiary run out of funds. We have trusts that are spending down. There's a trust started probably with about $400,000, and it's probably down to about 60. But this beneficiary is totally set up within the public system with housing and with supports in the public system. So we're trying to make the personal support specialist stays involved with him, still paying for, we make sure there's plenty of subscriptions to Mad Magazine. That's something this beneficiary loves. That keeps him smiling. He was a great graphic artist too. But so we monitor things all the way through and try to make sure that the trusts don't run out. But inevitably, some trusts are going to run out. And if that happens, it's incumbent upon us to make sure the beneficiary is has enough support through the public system, all the way through. I mean, the idea of the special needs trust, again, is to supplement but not supplant what the public system is offering. Unless, of course, that you have millions and millions and millions of dollars and you don't need it, the government benefits. But even in that instance, you'll need Medi-Cal probably, because and you'll need a special needs trust, I think, for other reasons. But you should only be so lucky to have unlimited funds. Most of our families, are all different ranges of incomes when they set up their trust. All trusts are different sizes. We have a few that are very large. We have a lot that are very modest. We'll take them all.
One quick question. I missed probably who really manages the financial aspect of whatever is left for the mental.
Sure. Well, we have there's several layers. We have within our board of directors, there's an investment committee and a business committee. They develop the investment platforms that are all very, very conservative, designed for preservation, not growth. We have to be very careful, to be very mindful about the prudent rules of investing. So there's Lindbrook Capital that works to execute the investment platforms. The funds are held again on a daily basis by Fidelity. Disbursements are handled through Binder and Company. Then as trustee, in this instance, I have to approve every disbursement. So again, there are multiple layers of oversight and involvement. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. Thank you.
Welcome. So if anybody ever has any questions that come up, please never hesitate to contact us. We'll respond. And like I said, a lot of families, it's a process of learning about us, who we are, what we do, and how we do it. Some
Carol,
families-
Bruce, thank you so much. I didn't mean to cut you off, Bruce. What were you
No.
about to say?
No, I was going to say some families make a decision and it's the trust is set up within 10 days. Some families, it's well over 20, 25 years. Everybody's different. There are a lot of factors that you're considering. So thank you for considering us too. That's why we're here. We would have no purpose if it wasn't to work with families like yours.
I
Well,
will
just
note,
thank you so much. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say that our contact information is at the top of the chat box. I will note we do have a manual that is a hefty PDF. So if you would like a copy of that, please feel free to shoot me an email and I'd be happy to send that over. Gosh, it's like over 70 pages. So it's a lengthy read, but I'm happy to share that and give you guys more information.
And it's guaranteed to provoke a lot of questions once you read the manual.
Well, you've just been wonderful and really providing amazing tools, just tangible tools for our community members. I just want to take another moment to thank Janis Black Warner for making this presentation this evening possible, and other presentations on a monthly basis that we're able to have these guests and come and offer these services for our community. So thank you so much for your dedication and commitment to providing the most current information and resources for our community, Janis.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. It's been about 10 years since I've been in this community taking care of my son, and we didn't really have a home with NAMI West Side LA. I was on the board of Vista Del Mar for years, and we used our boardroom. And then the pandemic came and Zooms, but there is something about being in person. And I was just talking to Sharon Janis about that. She's like our queen of NAMI, and we all love her. And my dream one day is to have a building or a home that we can have and we can go be in person. And I was thinking about you, Bruce. It would be nice if you guys had a community where you could get your beneficiaries together, because most of them isolate, and if they're in the same town, or it would be nice that they share the commonality. And I bet you have a personal support specialists to say, I have another support member I support, but getting them together and meeting, because isolation is so hard to do this alone for them, especially all of us.
It really is. I mean, I think that's, well, especially with individuals with schizophrenia, it's that sense of isolation that is just so pervasive and so horrible. So it's anything that we can do to, obviously to be there and alleviate that. And even if it's only for a minute, because the conversation we have with someone might be the only decent conversation they have for a month with someone. And, there are families who are setting up housing, who are buying homes and fixing them up. And it's a long, difficult road. But I know of there's a group up in Oakland, and they're just about ready to buy a house, and where their, family members, their sons and daughters can live. And I'm really looking forward to that too, because what an efficient way of providing personal support services too. When people are gathered in one place. So as I know, housing is such a huge, huge problem.
Well, thank you again, Bruce and Carol. And Carol, thank you so much for offering to share the not the directory, but the what did you call that? The manual. Thank you. And for those of you that put your email in the chat, I already sent out the slides and Carol's contact information there as well. So if you have any questions about the slides, you can reach out to me or Carol. And just thank you so much, because it's such an uncertainty, and to know that there are people out there to provide support and resources and guide you through this process. It's just wonderful. So thank you, Bruce. Thank you, Carol. Send our thanks to Barron as well. And I hope you'll come back another time and join us.
Love to. And best to Sharon, please, again.
I will, Bruce. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, everyone, take care. And for any friends of everyone that's on here, this will be on our YouTube channel too. So if anyone would like to share it with other folks that weren't able to join, you can check out our YouTube channel. Okay, thank you, everyone. Have a lovely evening.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.
Thanks, Aaron. Thank you, Carol.
Thanks, Janis.
Thank you.